The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. So it's nice to see you all again. I guess this is our last day, and I'll miss seeing all your faces here before me every morning and afternoon. But anyway, I'm sure I'll get used to it. I'm going to be talking about the Litany of the Great Compassionate One and joy. So I offered a Dharma talk on the Litany of the Great Compassionate One in 2001. And I decided that I would use much of it for the talk today, although I've changed it to some degree. So the litany originated in India. The time of its origin and author are unknown, but it's very ancient. The litany is also called the Dharani of Great Compassion. I found a dictionary definition of litany, a series of short prayers. And the description of Dharani in Zen's eternal life is litany, hymn, a brief Buddhist scripture similar to the even shorter mantras, often used as a religious invocation or as the core of a scripture to encourage a religious attitude of mind, such as compassion, gratitude, or faith. A litany or dharani is an invocation that embodies the quality of a bodhisattva. The Litany of the Great Compassionate One is addressed to the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara, she who hears the cries of the world. Its purpose is to invoke great compassion within ourselves. And I find when I went over this talk at the Hermitage, and when I went over it this morning, I found it really helpful just to hear the litany and see what I had written about it, because it's very uplifting. Sometimes, so it's addressed to the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara, and you probably can't see it, but I put on the altar one version of the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara that I have in my room, and I might, maybe at the end of the talk, I'll bring it up to the camera so you can actually see what it looks like, but it's a lovely image. And sometimes the thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara has an eye in each hand. So 1,000, as the She Carries Me song goes, 1,000 hands, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 ears to hear my cries. So also, let's see, the 1,000 arms, if I can find my notes here. These 1,000 hands and eyes represent Avalokiteshvara's practice of skillful means, compassionately assisting beings by whatever methods would be effective, using whatever comes to hand as a tool. So there are different things in each of the 1,000 hands. And Reverend Master Jiyu used to say that one of the hands was often in some depictions, one of the hands was holding a lotus under Avalokiteshvara's chin. She was holding a lotus under her chin to show that one of her arms has to be dedicated to herself. So just showing that Even Avalokiteshvara had to turn the stream of compassion within. So it's a reminder, a constant reminder that we need to turn the stream of compassion within. Help is always given, is always there. And I mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention it again. It is said that Avalokiteshvara is drawn to suffering as iron is drawn to a magnet. And calling for help has sometimes been direct and immediate when something frightening or very painful was arising in me. And it didn't necessarily make the pain or fear go away, but it had allowed me to find the stillness and faith to be still in the midst of it, to know that the compassion of the unborn goes deeper than the pain or fear or whatever is arising, and that it is what is real, not the pain or fear. I have also found that when I've sincerely asked for help at a less dramatic time, perhaps, at some point there has been a shift in me that allowed me to see things differently and accept what was going on. It has helped me to trust and have faith. Calling for help, asking for help, and being willing to go forward with it and trust in it can help tremendously, but we still have to do the work. Calling for help has allowed me to open to the help that is already there. And as I was thinking about this talk this morning, what came up for me was what one of the monks told me yesterday, that she went out to one of our hermitages to do a retreat shortly after our former abbot had left. And this was a time of grief for the monastery. And when she was out at the hermitage, she felt this deep grief, possibly even a deeper grief than just that. And then she found that she was being held up by something much deeper, by an infinite compassion that was comforting and very sweet. And I wanted to mention this because some of the things we were talking about yesterday, some of the grief of the world, the suffering, when we open to it, we can be held in this infinite compassion that is very reassuring. And I have found in my own practice that sometimes when I've opened to something very painful and just was willing to sit within the unknown and the fear that it was bringing up, that pretty soon I was embraced within this compassion. Now I couldn't count on it, It wasn't a guarantee. I just had to be willing to sit with whatever was going on, but often that would arise and I would see that the compassion went deeper and was more real than the suffering I had been experiencing. Selfless compassion could be clearly seen in Reverend Master Jiyu, not because she was fundamentally different from anyone, but because of the depth of her training. And partly what brought me to the Abbey, although I didn't know it at the time, was the longing to find this true selfless compassion. And I saw it in Reverend Master Jiyu. I saw something real. So I'd like to read the litany and go through it line by line. And I went over this litany with Reverend Master Koten in 2001 when I did the original talk. So what I will be talking about is partly what he told me and partly my sense of it. And I had an interesting experience. I brought this, my notes on the Dharma talk I gave in 2001 out to the Hermitage, and I decided to use it for my last talk. And when I was reading it, I thought, boy, I really knew a lot then, a lot more than I know now. This is great. And then I remembered that Reverend Master Koten had gone over it with me, and I thought, That's the reason. That's the reason. Okay, so here we go. Adoration to the triple treasure. The triple treasure is Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We love and respect and hold in the utmost esteem the triple treasure or the three refuges. Adoration to Kanzeon, who is the great compassionate one. Om to the one who leaps beyond all fear. To know the unborn is to know that there is that within ourselves and all beings that is beyond all fear. Saying it helps us to do it. Yes, we can do this. We don't try and sit through the fear until it goes away. We don't rush out and do everything that frightens us to get over the fear. What we do is we don't let the fear stop us from doing what is good to do. And we don't turn away from the fear because fear is not a permanent state of mind. It is something that arises and passes away. Having adored him, may I enter into the heart of the noble adored Kanzeon. May I leap beyond all fear. In other words, be able not to be moved by whatever is arising, and may I come to know and be one with my true heart, which is great selfless compassion. This is my wish. His life is the completion of meaning. This is our purpose for living, to know and respond to our true nature. Reverend Master Jiyu said it is our birthright. It's not something for just a few people to know, but it is the birthright of all beings. And it is something that we can all know. It is the only thing that gives life meaning. And this is what holds us in the midst of our suffering. His life is the completion of meaning. Oh, I already read that. It is pure. It is that which makes all beings victorious and cleanses the path of all existence. The life of training makes all beings victorious and helps us to cleanse our karma. What does it mean to be victorious? It is the victory over the self. Learning to not be moved by greed, hatred, and delusion. Learning how to not be moved by old karmic patterns. Starting on this path and working on ourselves makes us victorious. And as you all know, this is not easy to do. It takes a lot of work, a willingness to make a lot of mistakes and to keep on going no matter what. Perseverance is so very important. Om, O thou seer, world transcending one. The seer is the one who sees clearly, one who sees things as they truly are, without the clouds of karma or dust in our eyes. Training allows us to see things as they truly are. Although even when we have a small glimpse of this, things can cloud up again because we have to continually work on our karma. The litany is speaking to Avalokiteshvara, that which we see to be pure, all-embracing, all-accepting compassion, free of defilements, and also to what is within ourselves. We're wishing to awaken this within ourselves. Oh, hail to the great Bodhisattva. Hail means to cheer, to salute or greet, to welcome, to acclaim, to approve enthusiastically. All is defilement, defilement, earth, earth. In a talk Reverend Master Koten gave in 2001, he talked about training being like walking down a path that is dark and not being able to see the path. The only reason you know you are on the path is because you haven't fallen into a ditch at the side of the path. I really like that. You know when you're off the path. You don't necessarily know when you're on it. For some people, there are the sudden flashes of lightning, which allows them to see the path more clearly, and for others, there is the gradual lightening up of the path or turning up a dimmer switch. Even though we see clearly from time to time, and the path is getting gradually less dark, we still have our karmic habits, the self that we need to train with. And at times it can feel like all we are seeing is our defilements. All is defilement, defilement, earth, earth. But it actually isn't so. Do the work within my heart. There is a longing to do the work within our hearts. There is all this suffering, all the karma, all this self pulling us in all directions, and yet if we truly look, if we stay still, there is the longing to do what is truly good to do, which will cleanse the defilements, the karma. And I think I mentioned this before, but I would find that if in my early days, if I made a mistake, and sometimes it was purposely going against what I knew to be the good thing to do, just I guess out of a stubbornness, I would then see my faith more clearly, because right away I would know I had made a mistake and know that I really wanted to do the work within my heart. May I awaken within myself the desire to do this work. May we awaken to the mind of the Bodhisattva and practice charity, tenderness, benevolence, and sympathy. On another level, even if all we see is our defilements, if we are training, the work is being done on a deeper level. And I find that very reassuring. Training transforms us on a deeper level, on a deep level. May the unborn do this work within my heart, the work of cleansing the karma and awakening to the truth. May this go on, even if I don't see it happening. When it is dark, it can be difficult to continue to make the effort, but if we do, one day the lotus will blossom and we will know the joy of the unborn. O great victor, I hold on, praising Kanzeons and our one-day victory. I will hold on, I will trust. To Indra the Creator I cry. Reverend Master Jiyu said this is a way of referring to the unborn. Indra is one of the protectors of the Dharma. We are calling upon that which protects the Dharma, calling on everything to help us. We do need help. It is not showing a weakness to cry out for help. We all need help. When we do the work within our hearts, which is the meditation and the training and the precepts, and we hold on no matter what, and we cry out for help, then we will come to know the unborn. Move, move, my defilement-free one. This is the child of the Lord moving up, sense of something growing and moving within oneself. This faith is nourished through great compassion. It is nourished through faith and training and turning the stream of compassion within. We need to remember to have compassion for ourselves. This is so important. I think I remember Reverend Koten saying to me that the child of the Lord will not be nourished unless we have compassion for ourselves. So we truly need to do this. Come, come, here, here, a joy springs up in me, faith and certainty. There is great joy when we awaken to the unborn, when we do the work of the unborn. There can be sorrow and joy at the same time. Speak, speak, give me direction. It is the unborn that is wise, not us. Even if we have a great awakening, we can know wisdom when we are still within the unborn and ask what is best to do. We need to bow to that which is greater than ourselves. Awakened, awakened, I have awakened. What joy! Over time, awakening does occur. O merciful one, compassionate one, of daring ones the most joyous hail. There is nothing that compares with the joy of knowing the unborn and doing the training within our hearts. Thou art all successful, hail. Thou art the great successful one, hail. There is actually no success or failure in training. It takes as long as it takes. The successful one is one who leaves behind ideas of success and failure, of wanting to achieve something in one's training, one who continues to go on no matter what. We are opening to our true nature and cleansing of our karma because it is right to do. It's what our heart longs to do. Thou hast attained mastery in the discipline, hail. The discipline is the precepts. Thou hast a weapon within thine hand, hail. The weapon can be the bow and arrow, the arrow of emptiness as we recite at evening office, the two arrows meeting in midair in the Sandokai, the immediate response that comes from within oneself. Thou hast the wheel within thine hand, hail. The hands of Kuan-Yin hold the wheel of the Dharma, the turning of which is the true appearance of Kuan-Yin. It is the turning of the wheel of the law in the direction of training, in the direction of the truth, and away from greed, anger, and delusion. Thou who hast the lotus, hail. One of the names of Kuan-Yin is lotus bearer, and this is the flower of our openness to the Lord. It is the lotus womb of the Tathagata, which we must become and enter in order to know the fullness of the Dharmakaya, the fullness of the Lord of the house. The lotus is known as purity, spiritual rebirth, great compassion, the blossoming of our training. Hail to thee who art the root of eternity, that which is still in the center of things, that which does not move. Hail to thee who art all compassion, hail, singing the praises and virtues of Kuan-Yin, the unborn. Adoration to the triple treasure, hail. Give ear unto this my prayer, hail. May it be successful. May it be so that we can do this. May we give ear unto it. Viewed from within and without, there is no separate self. There is that which fits. Reverend Master Koten said, it's an old religious principle that the spoken word, the truth spoken can activate the will. The litany of the great compassionate one can activate the will and help with depression and despair. It can help one to look up, to keep on going in the midst of suffering. To use your will to keep on going is what turns things around. And Dogen says, the koan in daily life is will. Words are its key. Part of the meaning of this is that words can be spoken to help generate the will. There can be joy in this world, the joy of listening to your heart and responding. Even with the suffering that goes on in the world, there can be joy. And I wanted to give an example from my own training in that once when Reverend Margaret was away and I was the acting prior, I went into the kitchen and Reverend Valora told me that she needed some extra help. So the first thing I did was I looked at the list of monks and went down the list because I felt like I was, really busy and I had a lot to do and I couldn't help. And I went through and I couldn't find a single monk who I felt could really spare the time to help. So I finally said, I will help. And immediately I was filled with peace and everything relaxed. And I thought, isn't that interesting? So I wanted to just let you know that you can find joy in your training, even when the world is a mess. And you will also sometimes experience this suffering, and they aren't separate from each other. I wanted to read one of our invocations. I had intended to read it earlier in this talk, but I missed my notes that said I wanted to read it then. So I think I'm going to read it now. And I think it fits. I'm not quite sure how, but it seems to fit with this talk. It's called You Weep in All the Sorrows, and it is a invocation that Reverend Master Koten wrote, speaking to Avalokiteshvara. You weep in all the sorrows of the world, rejoice in all its joys. In life you're present in all suffering, and cry in all the cries. Rejoice in all the sorrows of the world. You weep in all its joys. Oh, weep in all the sorrows of the world. Oh, joy in all the joys. There's something that goes beyond the joys and sorrows of the world. There's something much deeper. In every being's secret, silent heart, you have your dwelling place, and you cannot be moved or grasped or fixed by mind in any space. All those who say they know you not at all, for all that know you well. You are the secret yearning of their hearts, and this they dare not tell. You are compassion's source, the going out. You are the coming in. No thing escapes you or impedes your work. You are the wondrous truth. To you we turn. You are the way, the goal, the journey and its end. Regarder of the cries, O guide our hearts, to peace our reaching home. And I had an interesting experience one time when I was at the Hermitage and I was doing morning service. And I think it was actually when I was reciting the Litany of the Great Compassionate One. And usually when I was reciting it, I was just keeping, it was reciting morning service, it was a work for me to stay focused. My mind would be constantly wandering off. While I was meditating, I seemed to be able to stay focused. And when I do morning service, often my mind would start wandering. But this time, I was really focused on the litany, and it was really a prayer for me. And it was during a time at the Hermitage where some very, very painful stuff was arising. And then I was given this gift of seeing that there was something much bigger. There was a bigger picture. And suddenly all that suffering I had been feeling was nothing. It was so unimportant. And this was an example of the path lighting up for a short while, but it was one of those things that lasted for a short while, and then I was back with daily life. But it was a very helpful thing to see that the suffering that had been so big became so small. Now I'd like to read a little bit from the Book of Joy. Because people do ask, how can there be joy in a world where there's so much suffering? And the title of this chapter is Despair, the world is in such turmoil. It was time to ask the question that people from around the world most wanted me to ask. A question not about joy, but about sorrow, and not about theirs, but about others. People all over the world wanted to know how they could possibly live with joy in a world so filled with sorrow and suffering. A woman named Dawn, who sent in a question, asked it this way. The world is in such turmoil. War, starvation, terrorism, pollution, genocide, and we could add a few things now, because this is a few years later. My heart hurts for these issues. How do I find joy in the midst of such large world problems? You show your humanity, the Archbishop began, by how you see yourself as not apart from others, but from your connection to others. I have frequently wept about the things such as the ones you have mentioned. Now he talks in Christian terms, but I think you'll get the point. God created us and said, go now, my child, you have freedom. And God has such an incredible reverence for that freedom that God would much rather we went freely to hell than compel us to come to heaven. Yes, we're capable of the most awful atrocities. We can give a catalog, and God weeps until there are those who say, I do not want to try to do something. It is good also to remember that we have a fantastic capacity for goodness. And then you look again, and you see those doctors and nurses from other parts of the world who go into those situations. I mean, you think of, say, Doctors Without Borders. Why do they go there? I mean, they could stay in France or wherever and have a wonderful practice, but they don't. They go off to some of the most poverty-stricken places. You've seen it with Ebola. People go into a hugely dangerous situation, coming from countries where they don't have Ebola, and they have no reason to go to Sierra Leone or wherever. They are just showing us that we are all what we are all capable of being. And by proxy, we link ourselves to those and try as much as we can to enter into who we are, people of compassion. What can you do to help change that situation? You might not be able to do a great deal, but start where you are and do what you can where you are. And yes, be appalled. It would be awful if we looked on all that horrendousness and we said, it doesn't really matter. It's so wonderful that we can be distressed. That's part of the greatness of who we are, that you are distressed about someone who is not family in any conventional way, and yet you feel distressed equally. It's incredible just how compassionate and generous people can be. When a disaster such as 9/11 happens, we realize we are family. We are family. Those people in the Twin Towers are our sisters and brothers. And even more startlingly, the people who were piloting those planes, they are our sisters and brothers. You have a tsunami happen, and have you seen the outpouring of love and compassion and caring? I mean, you don't know the victims from a brass farthing, and people just gave and gave, because that's actually who we really are. After 9/11, you would have expected that those who hated America would have been gloating, but there were very, very, very few people gloating. People were deeply, deeply distressed. Had the American president not hit back, we might have had a different world. We will have a different world, of course, eventually, but just look at any tragedy. When miners are trapped in Russia, people don't say, I can't speak Russian, or I don't even know where that place is on the map. There is compassion that just springs up. Yes, we do have setbacks, but you must keep everything in perspective. The world is getting better. Think about the rights of women or how slavery was considered morally justified a few hundred years ago. It takes time. We are growing and learning how to be compassionate, how to be caring, how to be human. Another part, I'll just read a little bit about this. There are very many people. I mean, my heart leaps with joy at discovering the number of people who care. How many people walked in New York City for the environment? I mean, it was incredible. Okay, well, I think I'll end there. That's a lot of reading for now. And I would like to end with another one of our invocations. Called Kanzeon Regarder Great. Kanzeon Regarder Great, listening, hearing the cries of the world. Give ear unto our humble prayers, those in our hearts and those said aloud. Kanzeon you ever see, clearly, brightly through judgments all. Root in us intention pure, to see things as they truly are. Deep within the dark, Kanzeon compassionate one, deep within the darkest hells, lead us kindly through each our fears, guide us to our own true home. Great compassion, gentle voice, of true wisdom's purest heart, Kanzeon, help us to know your true heart in conditions all. And remember to look up. Looking up means to have faith. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha.